Good evening. Hello everyone and welcome to Monday Night Live. I'm Tanja from Tanja Kraus Horsemanship and I'm excited to be with you once again for Monday Night Live. It is 8 p.m. here in Australia and that's Eastern Standard Time. We have all reset our clocks and everything on the east coast of Australia, so we're all on the same time zone at the moment. And as we start to head into closer into winter, we will readjust the time again back to 7 o'clock, but I will definitely let all of you guys know when that happens. Hello Karen, happy birthday! Yay, happy birthday. I hope you had a great day. Hey babe, all the way from the lounge. Hi Beck, hey Hillary, thanks everyone for joining. So yeah, absolutely, I'm going to let everyone know when I do move the time slot back to 7 p.m. I don't think we need to do it yet. It's still nice and light, not obviously now, but it's I was still out pretty late with my horses last night, so I want to make sure that it's well and truly dark and we don't have the opportunity to be outside with our horses before I bring the time back. And so tonight what I want to talk about is feel and timing. Hey Shirley. I just taught this course. Shirley was at it actually in the South Island of New Zealand. I taught it on the North Island as well, and I'm going to be on the Gold Coast this weekend presenting this course. And I think it's a really fun and enjoyable course to spend the few days just really focusing on our feel and our timing, and it is actually a self-carriage as well, but I'm not talking about that as part of this Monday Night Live show. I'm just going to concentrate on the feel and timing. So let's get straight on into it. And the first thing I want to talk about is feel. And what is it? Feel and timing, what is it? How do we get it? There's a lot of conversations or dialogues opened all the time. There's a lot of articles, there's a lot of information out there about what is feel and timing, and I think there's so many different interpretations on what is feel and timing, and I'm just simply going to share with you my opinion about it, or what my interpretation or the way that I define feel and timing for me within my philosophy and how I use it for my horses and obviously those that I teach. So when I think about feel, I think about that there is at least 3 different categories of feel that we need to bring awareness to. And the first one is probably the one that we all think about the most, or the one that we all associate with feel the most, and that is our physical touch. So our actual, skin to skin contact with the horse, or I put my legs on, or I pick up the bridle in his mouth, or I put my right leg on to roll his ribs away, or I open my hand out. It's feeling the halter and lead when I'm leading him down the street or something like that. It's the feel that I put down the rope. So it's the physical sensation that the horse receives from me, and I think that that's probably where most of us kind of sit when we're talking about feel with our horses, is the physical feel. So that's very good. I think that we really need to consider our physical feel, and I think we really need to consider how we're using that physical feel and how we start to require a little bit of responsiveness out of our horses. Some of you may have watched the video that I put up recently of me walking down the street leading Cooper, and because I've broken my toe, or I'm hoping it's not broken, but it felt pretty broken at the time. It's recovering quite nicely. A few days ago I was taking him up to the vet to get his teeth done, and I dropped the tailgate of the float right on my toe. I was wearing boots. It would be a lot worse injury if I wasn't, so I was wearing boots, but it has bruised right down my toe. And I was leading Cooper back to the paddock the other day, and because I'm hobbling along and I'm limping, and it took me 2 minutes to walk 100 meters, in the video I'm sort of filming as I'm going, and I'm showing how Cooper would take 2 steps and then he'd wait, and then he'd take 2 steps and then he'd wait, and then he'd take 2 steps and he'd wait. And he wasn't ahead of me. He wasn't waiting for me to catch up. He was kind of letting me get ahead and then walking and catching up, and then waiting, and then letting me get ahead and then walking up and waiting like that. So that is feel. That is my horse being able to start to feel the difference between the lead when it's got a lot of slack in the rope, and as I started to sort of hobble forward, and just the lead started taking up a feel in the lead, and Cooper knew that once the lead started kind of moving under his chin, and I'm not talking about the halter taking up on his face, I'm talking about just the knot underneath his chin there starting to move, then he knew, oh, I'm about to run out of rope, I need to walk forward. But because he knew that I was walking so slowly, he would only take those couple of steps and then pause, and then he'd let me get a few steps ahead, and we kind of hobbled all the way back to the paddock like that. So that is the physical feel that he was receiving from me in terms of what feel I was putting down the lead, and as I said, what feel we're putting down the rein, and what we're how we're asking our horses to respond to things. It would have been very difficult for me the other day if I was leading a horse that was needing to be sort of lugged into the halter, because I wouldn't have had the ability to do that with my foot the way that it was. And I need my horses to be nice and responsive to the feel coming in that lead. I'm not talking about pressure, and I think sometimes we get confused. We think, oh, I need to kick my horse to get him to go, or I need to open my hand and I need to pull on that bit to make him turn left or right or stop him or whatever it is, and that's not feel. Pressure is sometimes where we need to go to teach the horse that there is a increase in pressure or an increase in feel, if you like. But if your horse is still waiting to respond from pressure, he's responding to pressure, he's not responding to feel. I guess an analogy, a human analogy might be, you know, if you're constantly having to tell your kids to clean their room and you're still doing a 1, 2, 3 count, they're responding to a threat, okay? They're trying to avoid a consequence, and they're going to clean their room instead of just going to clean their room when you ask them to clean their room, which would be responding in a respectful manner to a suggestion or to an ask. And that's what I expect my horses to do. Young horses obviously don't know how to follow feel in a lead, although they are very, very light if you communicate with them in the right way from early on. You can teach horses to follow a very light feel, and I think that's sometimes where we trip up, is we think that the horse isn't going to know something, and we immediately put a significant amount of pressure on that lead or on our legs or on the mouth or whatever it is, and we don't take the time that we need to have the horse responding to a feel, whether that's an energetical feel or a physical feel. So I'm still talking about physical feel at the moment. So that is something I think we need to consider in terms of what feel are we putting down the rope. Am I leading my horse with a hand fist like that? Am I riding with my hand closed like this? Am I riding with my legs kind of scrunched on him all the time? Am I kicking him constantly to get him to go? Any level of significant pressure that is required to ask your horse to move or go, in my opinion, isn't a level of feel, and needs to be refined in some way. So the next part of physical feel that I want to talk about is something that I don't think we consider a lot, or we do, we're aware of it, we know that it's there, but we don't necessarily interpret it the way that our horse is trying to communicate to us. So, and that is the feel that we're getting back while we're riding. So riding or working with my horse is a two-way street. It's like being on the phone with my horse. It's a two-way conversation all the time. So often you'll hear people talk about, oh, my horse is heavy in the bridle, or he's dull to the leg, or he's dull in the mouth, or he's this, or he's that. And it's all this, it's all a simple way of transferring blame to the horse, and interpreting those issues in a way that means, oh, well, it's my responsibility to lighten the horse or soften the horse. And yet you put that horse in the paddock and a fly lands on it and it swishes a fly straight away. So the horse isn't necessarily, he's not dull. He can feel you kicking him and pulling on his reins and bumping him and doing all those things, but he has become indifferent to what that means, in either out of a lack of respect or what I see a lot of to protect himself. So when people say to me that their horse is dull in the face or dull in the mouth, what I see is a lot of bumping or a lot of pulling, and the horse is actually having to brace against it in order to stop, to protect themselves. So one of the examples that I use in my courses is if I walked past you over the course of a couple of days, and every time I walked past you, I kind of flicked you in the belly, like, you know, with the back of my hand, just tapped you on the belly. Within 2 or 3 goes, 2 or 3 times of me doing that, you would either block what I was going to do, so you'd put your hands out and you'd try and stop me from getting to your stomach. You would avoid it like this. You would actually try and dodge away from it. At the very least, you would tense up your tummy muscles so you were able to take that hit easier than if you weren't tensing your tummy muscles. So that's what I see a lot of our horses doing, is they'll get set in the mouth, or they'll get set in the face if they're being ridden in a hackamore, or if they're bracing against the halter because they've been bumped on, or something like that. So they actually learn. I see it with whips and spurs and things like that as well. I see horses actually doing the opposite of what the people are wanting them to do, because they're trying to lean into the pressure of the whip, or they're trying to lean into the pressure of the spur because of its overuse, and the horse is having to protect himself against that implement. Now, I'm happy to ride with spurs. I'm happy to use a whip. I'm not saying don't use that stuff, but what I am saying is if as you start to consider bigger, stronger, faster equipment, then to my mind something's going wrong in that training system. If you're starting to go to bigger stuff, there's a communication line down that needs to be looked at. So physical feel, what are we sending down the line, and are we listening when the horse is sending stuff back? So if he's leaning, is he always leaning in the same direction? Cooper got his teeth done the other day, and I mentioned to Ollie, our amazing dental vet up here in Grafton, and I said to him, he found a pocket in his tooth, and he said, that would be a little bit painful, and he kind of sprayed it out, and the horse was sedated, but you could see that Cooper was still reacting to having that done to that tooth. And I said, it's funny, he did kind of muck up a little bit under saddle, which is very unlike Cooper, and I thought it was just because he had not been worked for 6 weeks, and I thought he was just a little bit fresh or whatever. And he said, oh, well, was it on the right rein? Is that where the issue was? And I said, as a matter of fact, it was on the right rein. It was when I was heading to the right that Cooper really didn't want to bend to the right. He was really struggling to bend to the right, and it was on the right hand side of his jaw that we're having to do some management with a pocket that he's got happening in his tooth. So it would have been painful for him, and that's where, and I have, I was trying to interpret it, so I wasn't ignoring it, and I certainly didn't get rough or anything like that. I didn't get frustrated and say, come on, Cooper, I don't know why you're not bending. You know how to do this. But my interpretation was that he had a little bit of time off, and, I didn't go to a physical issue because he has been rested for so long. And it turns out that in all probability, it was reactivity to his tooth, which we're fixing now. So that's fantastic. I shouldn't have any more issues, and I will soon know, as the days go on, I will soon know whether it was a tooth issue, because he'll stop reacting the way that he was as it feels better. So are you listening to what the horse is trying to tell you? Is he leaning? Is he unbalanced only to one side? Is he short stepping? All of these could be issues, and if you tune into them, all of these could be reflective of issues, physical issues, maybe tightness in the muscles, or chiropractic issues, or teeth, or your saddle doesn't fit properly, or whatever it is. So really try and pay attention to what the horse's feel is trying to tell you back. And that's a skill that I think we all need to spend time on mastering, is being able to receive messages back to us and interpret the reins instead of just going, oh, he's leaning on me, we feel that and say, oh, okay, is it to the right? Is it to the left? Is he pulling down? Have I been bumping him? Is he trying to protect himself? What is happening here? And then we can try and work through the issues from there, or work through the problem. Most of the time, these little things that we talk about that we've got issues in riding, they're a window to a problem that the horse has. It's got nothing to do with turning right. It's got something to do with the horse being not able to flex to that direction or whatever it is. It's usually an opportunity to look a little deeper and look for something that's maybe not quite right. So the second type of feel that I want to talk about, hey Jen, thanks for joining. The second type of feel that I want to talk about is our mental feel. So we've spoken about the physical, we've spoken about how we're communicating via our body and physically touching the horse. We've talked about receiving the horse's physical messages back to us. Is he pushing? Is he leaning? Is he doing all those things? Now we're stepping into the mental game. So when I talk about mental feel, what I'm talking about there is what's going on in our mind. Mental feel is all about presence, and it's all about clarity. And it's all about having not necessarily a clear mind. I don't want to say an empty mind, but what I want to talk about is your mental feel is, are you getting frustrated because a maneuver's not working properly? Are you overthinking a maneuver or learning how to break something down? And so are you partially distracted while you're riding because you're trying to think about where my legs go in a flying change? And so what I call that is white noise. The horse gets to feel all of that from you as you're going along, and he doesn't know how to interpret it. He doesn't know that you don't know where to put your legs in a flying change. So what he gets from you is a lack of presence. So even though you're overthinking about the maneuver that you're actually doing, you're not being present in what's happening between you and the horse, in the communication between you and the horse, the phone conversation, right? It's kind of like you've got another app running in the background. You know, your phone goes slower or all the notifications start popping up and you get distracted. You know, you might be on the phone to someone and you might be on FaceTime or Skype or something like that, and the notifications start coming up and you see a notification and all of a sudden you step out of that conversation and you start reading what the notification was. So it's those moments of lack of presence that is going to compromise your riding, especially, I'm not going to say at a high level because it's going to happen worse on a colt, because you need to be really, really present when you're riding a young horse. But on any horse, it is going to compromise your communication and your riding and your ability to be clear in what you're trying to ask the horse. What I think our mental feel is as well is our ability to know when we're going to release. You know, what am I actually looking for today? What am I trying to teach my horse a maneuver? Do I know exactly what it is that I'm trying to feel? If I don't know what it is I'm trying to feel, I end up going around and around and around and thinking to myself, what was it that I was looking for again today? We need to have a clarity in our mind of what it actually is that we're trying to achieve out of that day's session, and be present in looking for that. A lack of confidence can also be poorly interpreted from the horse. And when I say a lack of confidence, I don't necessarily mean a fear of the horse or a fear of riding. And I've got, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there on my channel in regards to overcoming anxiety, and we've just done a workshop about it and all that kind of stuff. I'm not necessarily talking about rider confidence in terms of fear or fear of riding. What I'm talking about is rider confidence in knowing what it is that you are doing for that session. What are you looking for? What are you training? Where have you got your head in the game? What's your mental feel? What's your mental headspace? Are you taking a argument that you've had with someone onto the back of your horse? Have you got that going around in the back of your mind? Are you thinking about you know, what you've got to do when you get home, or what you're going to do for the weekend, or whatever. If you're distracted and you're not there mentally, you're checking out on your horse, and you're not present and you're not clear, and that can be interpreted as a lack of confidence on the horse's part, because he's saying, you don't even know what you're doing, we're just going around aimlessly. You've got to be clear in what it is you're trying to achieve and when you're going to release, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. The last one that I want to talk about in regards to feel, we've talked about physical feel, the two-way conversation, what I'm sending down to my horse and what he's sending back to me. We've spoken about our mental feel, which is all about us being present in what we're doing and having clarity about what it is that we're doing and when we're going to, how we're going to build that for the horse. The third one is our spiritual feel. And I use that word, it's sometimes people sort of, you know, look at me a little bit sideways when I use that word. And what I mean by spiritual feel is how we're relating to the horse in terms of our energy. So, you know, are we overexcited or over energetical for the day? Are we really flat? You know, I always laugh and joke about having a horse for an extended period of time is a relationship of a sort, right? And when you've been in a relationship with your partner for an amount of time, you know the minute they walk through the door, you know the minute they're on the phone, if something is not quite right. You can feel that. They don't have to say anything. They might say hello and you go, what's wrong? Are you all right? Are you feeling okay? You might not even, they might open their eyes in the morning and you'll look at them and go, oh, are you all right? What's wrong? What's up? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about spiritual feel is, you know, how are we showing up for our horses here? You know, what's in our heart that day? Are we carrying baggage down there? And bearing in mind that your horse is having his own experiences during the day and during the night and all of that stuff as well. Horses have off days. Horses have days where they feel flat. Horses have days where they've got a lot of energy. So spiritual feel is our ability to manage our own energy and what output, I guess, what we're putting out there. But it's also our ability to read the horse and know what his headspace is or what his feel is for that day. So, you know, I can look at Cooper and I can pretty much tell where his head's at and what will be the best kind of working session for that horse that day. If I can pick and choose from a few different lesson plans, then I get the opportunity to optimize how my horse is feeling. So, you know, if I walk down there and I can see that he's you know, feeling a little bit flat, or he's a little bit quiet that day, or he's a little bit just happy to hang around, that might be the day. And I'm not saying to do this on a horse that you've never done it with before, but Cooper can be ridden bridleless. That might be a day that I do a little bit of bridleless riding. Whereas the day that I walk around to walk down to the paddock and he's galloping around, he's kicking up his heels and he's doing all airs and graces in the paddock, that's the day I might say, hey, now's a good day to train flying changes. If I feel confident. I mean, you have to assess your ability and your confidence level. I mean, sometimes some of you will look at that horse and go, I'm not even riding that horse today. But with my performance horse, so my horse that I know and you know, we've been together for a long time and he's very skilled and all that sort of stuff, that's the day when I go, great, he's got energy to burn. I'm going to go ahead and use that energy and work on refining you know, his flying changes or something like that. I'm going to use that energy up. Whereas on another day where he's a little bit quieter or he's just wanting to sort of hang around, I may work on refining some smaller maneuvers and things like that. So I can add a little bit more flexibility and strength and suppleness into that session for that day, into that work plan for that day. Hey, Mummy. That is all for feel. So we've got physical feel, what we're sending down the line and what we're listening to the horse as they come back. We've got our mental feel, which is presence and clarity. And we've got our spiritual feel, which is how I'm showing up here how I'm controlling my energy and how I'm beginning to familiarize myself with my horse's energy and his spiritual field, what he's showing up with for the day. It brings us to timing. So timing comes into pretty much everything that we do with our horses has got an element of timing, and I'm sure that a lot of us have seen the result of poor timing. So you're walking along, you've put the halter on your horse and you're leading him along, and he decides to put his head down and start to eat grass, and you get a phone call at the same time, so you're distracted and you decide to pick up your phone and answer that call, and your horse has just learnt that if he pulls his head down and eats grass, that you're not going to address that. You've just given him permission to do that, basically, because you've mistimed it because you've been distracted by a phone call. So any kind of timing, another example of poor timing, which I want to share with you actually, because it was a dangerous situation, and it's something that I see probably a lot more of than I would like to in terms of our horse's attitude when we feed them. And what had happened was this particular horse was a challenging horse to deal with for the lady, and at feed time, he had a poor attitude around feed time. So he would it began with him just kind of shaking his head or putting his ears back or being a little bit demanding, maybe bumping on the gate and things like that. And that's the moment when you need to address that behavior. When your horse starts bumping the gate, when he starts pinning his ears back and looking at you, demanding his food, when he starts shaking his head and all that sort of stuff, if you give him his bucket of food or his biscuit of hay while he's got that poor attitude, you are rewarding, justifying that behavior. You're building on that behavior. So this was a horse that used to carry on a little bit like that, and unfortunately it was not addressed at that time. So the horse began to get worse and worse and worse at feed time, to the point where they were worried about going in the paddock with him with the feed bucket. And on this particular day, the lady had to rug the horse, so she had to get in there with him. And she kind of gave him his feed bucket, and she went to put the rug on, and he threatened her and sort of said, no, I don't want you to put the rug on. So he pinned his ears back at her and kind of, snarled at her a bit, and I think he might have lifted his back leg. So what she did, because she didn't know any better, was she put the rug down and left the paddock and thought, I'll come back in 10 minutes when he's had more time. So when she returned in 10 minutes, it had, of course, the opposite effect. So when she came back, the horse said to her, I already told you, I don't want you to be in here with me, and I've already threatened you, so now I'm going to follow up on my threat. And he actually picked her up on her shoulder and threw her down the paddock. So he managed to throw her probably a few meters. I wasn't there, and I got told about it later. So that is a really good example of a really bad circumstance or consequence of really poor timing. Their timing was way back when he first put his ears back. It should have been addressed then, and it should have been nipped in the bud then, before he escalated and got worse and worse and worse. And unfortunately that didn't happen. And then the poor timing on that day when that incident happened, that was poor timing, because he threatened her and she left. And he said, oh, good job, I've told her to go away, and she has. So then when she came back, he was like, oh, if you're not going to listen to me when I threaten you like that, then I'm going to follow through, and I'm really going to have a go about it. So luckily she's okay, and she was fine, and it's since been addressed with the horse. But that's just a really good example of poor timing. So number one thing about timing is it comes into factor on every single interaction that we have with our horse, from feeding to rugging to trailer loading to riding to leading to doing his feet, all that sort of stuff. The timing is always present. So to be mindful about our timing and when we're releasing and when we're applying pressure, if we can just be a little bit mindful about it, it's going to go a long way. The first thing that we generally think about when it comes to timing is the timing of the release. We all know that horses learn when we release, and so, you know, we ask, for example, the horse to do a lateral bend. We get the horse to do a lateral bend. He softens in the halter. The lead goes nice and soft, and we give to him straight away and say, "Good horse." That's the way that we say to the horse, "Good horsey, you know, you've done the right thing, so I'm gonna give you the release on the rein." If we can be mindful of when we're releasing, what we're releasing at that moment. So let's take the lateral bend on a green young horse that has had barely any handling. A green young horse that has had barely any handling, as soon as that horse turns its head and that rope goes slack, I'm going to go ahead and release straight away. I'm not really going to worry about whether the horse is biomechanically holding himself correctly at that point, whether he's balanced, whether the lateral bend goes through his whole body, because what I'm initially doing is teaching him how to respond to the feel of that halter on his nose, or the rein, the snaffle in his mouth, or the hackamore on his nose, or whatever it is that I'm doing. So in the early stages, it's quite okay for me to release immediately so the horse gets the idea of following that feel in the rope. And that's how I'm going to build a responsive horse, by immediately giving. As soon as he starts to give and I give, the horse starts to figure out, oh, if I just follow that feel, then I get rewarded. It's when they start to lean in it and they turn their head and then they lean into the halter. So we look at the horse and we go, well, he's bent, and we release, but unfortunately he was still leaning into the halter. So you've got to feel what's happening as well as observe what's happening as well. And that's how you develop the release, the timing of the release. As the horse builds into being consistent in that understanding of following the feel, then I'm going to start to look for a higher quality in that lateral bend. So I'm going to be looking for the horse to be balanced. I'm going to be looking for the horse to be bent correctly through his body. I'm going to be looking for the horse to offer some vertical flexion. I'm going to be looking for the horse to be patient and willing to wait there a little bit in that bend, and all of those things. So I can increase my expectations, but initially it depends on how knowledgeable the horse is and what I'm trying to teach it. So we also need to know when the horse has it right to be able to know when to release. So what I see a lot of people doing, and that's fine, that's why they're at a clinic, that's why they're there learning, but I'm just putting it out there, is what I see people doing is getting the correct maneuver, but because they're not sure whether that is it, then they don't release, because they're looking at me and they're going, is this it? Is this it? And I'm like, yes, let the horse go, let the horse go. Or I say, no, that's not it. This is what we're looking for. And that's how you learn about what it is that you're trying to achieve, or you know, exactly what it is that you're looking for. So up there in our mental feel and our clarity, our timing comes into it by knowing, what am I actually trying to do? Before I even put a cue on a horse, I need to know what I'm looking for, so I know when to stop applying the cue and I know when to release the pressure for the horse. So then the next part of timing is the ask. So when we're first starting out, we probably don't really consider the optimum time of when to ask something. All we're doing is trying to sort of, you know, pick up on a rein and say, I want you to turn left. And if we pick up the rein when the correct foot's in the correct place, then bonus. And if we pick it up when it's in the wrong place, then the horse generally will stumble through and he'll go ahead and make that left turn to the best of his ability. And that's fine, because again, that's how we all progress and that's how we all learn. But as we begin to talk to our horses and ourselves about refinement, and we start to look for refinement in those maneuvers or those skills or whatever it is that we're doing, what I'm looking for is to ask the cue at the optimum time that the horse's body is going to give me the optimum maneuver. So if I'm walking a straight line and I want my horse to turn left, it's going to be best for the horse if I ask for him to turn left as his inside front leg is leaving the ground, because then he can pick that up and place it over here. If that inside front leg, sorry, I hope I just said front leg. I'm talking about the front leg. So when his inside front leg is leaving the ground, I want to be able to direct that foot and say, put that over there as part of our left turn. And I'm not talking about ribs or anything yet. The ribs are all going to come into it later, but I'm just giving an example. If I ask the horse to do that turn when his left front foot is on the ground, what he has to do is step with his right front foot, and he's either going to try and bring it across here, because I'm telling him to turn left, right? So this foot's leaving the ground and I'm telling him to turn left over here. So he either has to go one over here and then get this foot from in behind that foot and turn left, or he has to ignore me for a step. So he has to step forward with the right foot, then wait for the left foot to be off the ground, and then go ahead and reach with that left front leg. Most horses are going to be able to stumble through. If you to pull on that left rein, and that's not what I teach, but I'm just, let's just roll along here. If you put the cue on that left rein and say turn left, most horses are going to interpret that the best way that they can, and they're going to say, okay, I need to be going left, and they're going to rearrange their feet, and they're going to do the best that they possibly can in order to get that left turn. And if all you want is a left turn, and you're never worried about the biomechanics of it, or you don't want to preserve your horse's longevity or whatever, that's all fine. You can just go ahead and keep asking that horse to turn left and not worrying about where his feet are and not worrying about the timing of the maneuver. But if you're a person who is looking either to be biomechanically correct, so asking the horse at the optimum time to build the correct muscles in the correct places and develop strength and flexibility through his body so he lives and is able to be ridden for a long time, or you're looking to get more out of a maneuver. So if you're asking your horse to turn left, and the difference between him turning left and taking a 3-inch step and him turning left and taking a 10-inch step is something that is going to be beneficial to you in some kind of competition or something like that, then what we need to do is get into the correct time with the horse's feet and ask at the correct moment so the horse is able to give us that 10-inch reach with that inside front leg or whatever it is. So the same goes for asking for the canter transition. When we're doing a canter transition, if we can get in time with the horse's feet and ask for that canter transition at the appropriate moment, and this is obviously not what I'm talking about for a colt. For a colt, I'm building the canter. So let's say we're beyond building the canter. So the horse is actually pretty adept at cantering along and taking up the canter cue and things like that. If we can get in time with the feet, then I'm going to have a canter transition. I'm going to refine my transition now by having a transition that's more balanced, that's less rushed. Because what horses will do, if you ask them when the wrong feet are in the wrong places, they will rush those feet out of the way to try and scramble to get the correct feet in the correct place to do what they know that you're asking them to do. Horses will absolutely compensate for us in a multitude of ways, and I see this all the time. So if you can learn to get in time with the feet, and you can learn to ask the correct thing at the correct moment, then those transitions all those turns or those maneuvers or those movements or whatever you're training are going to become that much more refined and have that much more quality and biomechanical benefit to the horse than if we don't worry about getting in time with the feet or getting the body in the correct position as well. So we're talking about timing of the feet. I'm also talking about the timing of waiting to ask the horse to do something Yes, the feet are very important, but also the body shape is very important. There's no point in asking a horse to do a maneuver if he's, there's no point in asking him, or you can ask a horse to turn left if he's looking to the right and his ribs are to the left. If he's in a counter arc, you can ask him to turn left and he'll do his best and he'll go ahead and he'll get over there. But if you can ask for his body to be in the correct position first, then that turn is going to be balanced and smooth and safe and all the rest of it, all those benefits that I just spoke about before. So timing, when to release, knowing what it is that we're after, knowing where the feet are, knowing when the optimum time is to ask to get the best quality maneuver or movement out of the horse in order to preserve their longevity and to develop their body correctly, refine the body. So the next thing that I want to talk about in regards to timing is when we're asking for things. So a lot of people ask me, when's the right time to be asking my horse to canter? When's the right time to be asking my horse for lateral work? When's the right time to be bringing my horse to a clinic? When's the right time? So the answer to the question is the horse will tell you when he's ready. And what I mean by that is that I don't think that we can have a black and white approach to these things. And of course, I don't have 4-year-olds out in my paddock that I'm teaching Piaffe to. But do I have 4 and 5-year-olds out in my paddock that we have played with Piaffe? Maybe once or twice? Yes, absolutely. Because when you can introduce something in an inspirational, fun, motivating way, and you're not doing the maneuver for the maneuver's sake, then it's interesting and motivating for the horse. It's something exciting where he gets to feel his body and go, oh, that feels really good. It's exciting when I feel my collection coming in, or when I feel my self-carriage coming in, or I can feel that I can shorten or lengthen or strengthen my body. So do I play with a lot of things? Absolutely. I hear a lot of black and white approaches to certain things, and it's not a philosophy that I personally subscribe to. Obviously, there's, I wouldn't start a horse under saddle, that was under 2.5 years old, 2 years old. And I've written things about that. I prefer, personally, I start my horses when they're over 3 years old, but there are certain circumstances in which I would start a horse that's under 3. And I won't go into them now because that's not what this video is about. I've probably done a Monday Night Live on it, and I know that I've written stuff about it. But if anyone particularly is watching this and you're thinking, I really want to know Tanya's thoughts on that, feel free to comment on the video or send me a private message and I'll get some information over to you. I've got no problem with sharing my ideas about colt starting and that sort of thing. But I hear, so there are certain rules. I'm not going to ride a horse that's under 2, but I hear approaches to things that are black and white where people say, oh, I won't canter a horse until it's 5, or, I won't do lateral work until it's 4, or I won't do this particular movement until it's 10, or I won't do this. And what I think that does is that it restricts you in a way that I think that's beneficial, and I think those things are spoken about for preserving the horse. I think those things have come about from a good place. I think those things have come from a place of, you shouldn't be doing that maneuver on a 5-year-old horse or on a 3-year-old horse because the horse isn't ready to do that maneuver. And I understand the preservation side of things, and I really subscribe to that. I'm all about the horse. I'm all about preserving the horse. But the downside to that is that when the horse turns 5 or 6 or 7, and then the person goes, right, now we're ready to do these maneuvers, because it says so in this book, or this is what my coach said, or whatever, then the person can run the risk of overdoing it, and maybe the horse isn't ready. Maybe the horse isn't going to be ready until it's 10 years old. So it's not only about preventing things until the horse is a certain age, to me, I want to feel the horse, and I want to assess each individual horse on their own merits, and I want to look at things and go, you know, I've got a horse that's happy and free-flowing in their movement and excitable and all that sort of stuff. So is it going to hurt for me to shorten the body a little bit and play with piaffe? They're not doing piaffe. It's not a correct piaffe. I'm not trying to do a piaffe. I'm not trying to do a maneuver or a movement. What I'm doing is I'm playing with the horse, and I'm playing with the concept of, can you shorten your body? Can you elevate the front? Can you sit down behind? And the horse, because there's not a pressure on the horse, I'm not trying to teach it to do something. And this is the magic in this, right? Because I'm not trying to teach it to do something, the horse feels that it's interesting and fun. It's kind of like when I was in grade 2, I think it was, I know my mum's watching, so she'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong. When I was in grade 2, I was really wanted to please my grade 2 teacher. She was a great teacher. I loved her. I used to colour in things for her all the time. And I always did all my homework, and I, rushed it to school the next day and all that sort of thing. And so what the teacher would start to do, she would give me some extra homework. She would give me extra things to do because that's what I wanted. And she would give me a homework that was probably a little bit more challenging, so it wasn't exactly what we were studying at the time, but she would give me work that was a little bit more interesting. Well, when I got to school the next day, and that work might not have been complete, or maybe it wasn't worked out in the best way or whatever, she didn't come down on me and say, oh, Tanya, that's terrible work and rah, rah, rah. She just said, oh, okay, this is what we need to do, or let's try this, or something like that. And so that's the kind of approach that I'm taking to my horses. I'm just saying, hey, here's something fun and interesting. Do you want to try this? And they're either going to go, yeah, this is great, or they're going to say, oh, actually, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, I'm not sure, and I'm going to take them back to something that they know and that they're confident with, and no harm, no foul, and we're all happy and everyone's happy. It's when I start to say to my horse, oh, you're athletic and you're skilled, so I am going to teach you piaffe, and you're going to be, you're going to be required to do this, and I need this done in a certain period of time. That's when I start to cause issues in my horses. When I start a colt for the first time, and I put those first few rides on that horse, I introduced to that horse a lot of concepts. I introduced to him the basics, obviously, and going forward and walk and trot and canter. I do canter horses within the first 30 days of being ridden. I don't like to not canter. Are some happy at a canter or have more canters under their belt when they go home than other ones? Yes, absolutely. But all of them have been cantered by the time they go home in several times, so they can start to build confidence around it. Some horses are really confident, and so they're happy to kind of bowl along. Some horses aren't so confident, so you need to nurture them and nurture their confidence within that canter. And so I think that if we put things in categories and we say, oh, well, you shouldn't be cantering a horse in its first 30 rides, and I wouldn't do it for 6 months, then those horses that are willing and happy in the canter, you're taking something away from them that they would enjoy and find stimulating. And the horses that are lacking confidence in 5 months' time are still going to lack confidence because they haven't experienced the canter, but they will have been ridden for 5 months, and then they're going to go, whoa, what's this? You haven't shown this to me, and it's potentially going to fuel their lack of confidence. So if you just give them those little bite-sized pieces and say, oh, why don't we try a little canter stride here or there? And the horse goes, okay, I can canter, then you're building the confidence around it instead of getting caught up in a movement or a maneuver. So I don't like to restrict myself by saying you can't do certain things with horses until they're a certain age. And I think I basically follow 3 golden rules, and I'm about to write a newsletter about this, and you'll see it come up on the Facebook page. And the last thing that I want to talk about in regards to that is everything in moderation. So again, I know that some of these rules have been put in place because people don't want to see you doing certain maneuvers or certain kind of work that could be wearing or tearing to the horse's body physically if we did it too much. But if you do, if you do canter the horse a few times here and there, you're not going to put undue strain on those horses' joints and ligaments and things like that. Obviously, if you canter that horse every single day, over and over and over again, a young horse, you're going to start causing issues in the horse. The horse is going to start going lame. He's going to start wearing in the joints. He's going to have premature arthritis. I heard about a horse the other day. I'm about to write another article about that. I heard about a 4-year-old horse that was in getting surgery for bone chips the other day because it had been a futurity horse and it's already got arthritis and it already had bone chips removed from the hocks, and now it's on hock injections. So, you can overdo it, and I know that these rules have been introduced to try and prevent that from happening. But what I think that what it causes is people to sort of, run at it at as soon as the horse turns 5, and they start running at it and going, okay, the horse is 5 now, I get to do this work, and then they relentlessly do it then, and then they're going to wear out the joints and cause premature arthritis and things like that anyway. So I think that a little bit of everything in moderation is very, very healthy for you. It's very healthy for the horse. It's very healthy for his mind, and I think it's healthy for his body as well. So I basically follow 3 rules. 1, the horse will tell you when he's ready. So, try and get on that level of communication with your horse. Try new things, try interesting things. Let your horse tell you, oh no, I lacked confidence around that. So you go, okay, well, let's go over here and do something that you did find confident. Because what you might do is show him something that generally is, a high level movement. And the horse might go, wow, this is really fun. I've started probably, I think I've got about 4 horses that came to me for starting. And interestingly enough, we're going to talk about canter, and that's what I was just talking about. But I've had about 4 horses come to me with really natural ability to do correct flying changes. And so these 4 horses, out of all the multiple horses that I've started under saddle, these ones in particular, when you lope them, if you lope them around in a nice big circle and then you came around, they would do a beautiful correct flying change to the other side. Now, a lot of people, myself included once upon a time, would have said, oh, you should not be asking the horse or letting the horse do flying changes. They've only got 30 rides under their belt, or 20 rides or 10 or whatever it was. But the horse found it enjoyable and was doing them correctly. I wouldn't let a horse do something incorrectly. But I think that if I wrote that rule down and said, oh, well, you can't do flying changes until you're 5 years old, I think I would take away that horse's natural desire to kind of feel their body and try new things and explore things. Whereas what I did do was I just put a little cue in and I built it in there. And I didn't do them over and over again. By the time the horse went home, they probably only done half a dozen flying changes. But when the horse down the track, when they are teaching flying changes, that horse is going to go, oh, I remember this. These are easy, because I didn't tell him he was wrong, and I didn't shut him down, and I didn't limit him by saying to him, you're not allowed to do flying changes until you're 5 years old. So Hillary's saying Oscar, yeah. So he's a very naturally athletic kind of a horse, and it's those ones that I think that we can take those black and white rules. A lot of people will say about soft feel. In the first 30 days, I show all of the horses that I start under saddle the idea and the concept of soft feel. Am I riding them in soft feel every single day in, day out? No, of course I'm not. They don't have the strength. They don't have the mental or physical capacity to do that. But am I showing it to them? Am I touching on it? Am I saying, hey, look at this. Hey, feel this. Hey, this is interesting. Am I doing lateral work with all those colts? Absolutely yes. Am I drilling it? No. But am I introducing the concept of lateral movements to them? Yes, absolutely, because I want them to have that idea in their mind, so when I am wanting to teach it to them, that it's in there and it's something that they've experienced and they're not frightened of it. So my 3 golden rules. Number 1, the horse will tell you when he's ready to do something. Number 2, everything in moderation. That goes for performance horses all the way to colts. Everything in moderation. Number 3, don't train maneuvers or movements for the sake of training maneuvers or movements. Think about it in terms of refining the body. Why am I teaching a horse piaffe? So I can teach the horse to shorten, elevate, and sit. That's the only reason. I'm not teaching a piaffe for a piaffe. And I don't care whether I never get the piaffe. What I want is to reward the horse for the idea in his mind and his attempt at shortening and elevating and sitting. Yeah? So if I don't train maneuvers for maneuvers' sake, then I'm working on refinement in the horse's body. And when I'm working on refinement in the horse's body, everything becomes easy for him to do, because I'm teaching him to be confident in his body and I'm teaching him to be light in his movements. So if I can teach the horse to be light and be able to be strong and light and strong and powerful, then I've got everything in the palm of my hand, really. When your horse feels mentally and physically well, so not perfect, your maneuvers don't have to be perfect, or your training doesn't have to be perfect. When he feels mentally and physically well, content, confident, that is the time when he's saying to you, hey, I can probably take a little bit more expectation. Hey, I can take a little bit more pressure. Hey, you can probably increase the expectation on that lateral bend. Hey, you can probably increase the expectation on that upward or downward transition, or whatever it is that you happen to be doing. Everything in moderation. So that is pretty much the end. I think I've got through all of my notes. I had all my notes pre-written out tonight on our talk for feel and timing. So to recap, feel. We've got 3 types of feel, or 3 types that we spoke about tonight. Physical, how I'm conducting myself when I'm asking for the horse to do something, and how I'm receiving and feeling messages that he's trying to send back to me. So my physical feel goes both ways. Then I've got my mental feel. So my mental feel is all about presence. It's all about clarity. Now I've got control, if you like, or I've got the ability to manage the mental feel that I'm showing up for with my horse. I don't have a lot of control over what mental feel my horse is giving back to me, but if I can teach myself how to identify it or how to read my horse, I can use it to the benefit of both of us. So as I said, if I can see that my horse is a little bit quieter or a little bit flatter, I'll maybe work on smaller movements that are quiet in their nature. If I feel like my horse is big and he's got a big mental feel that day, then I'll work on some bigger stuff or some more challenging stuff to give him a few puzzles or something to stimulate that mind, to reward that, and also so we both have a really great session. There's nothing worse than probably for your horse than you turning up and you've got one agenda of, oh, we're going to have this big, bouncy, exciting session, strenuous session today, and the horse feels really flat and he's going, oh, I just feel like hanging out. And then by the other end of the token, you get down to the paddock and he's all excited and everything, and you're thinking, I'm going to work on the intricacies of lateral bend today because I'm feeling a little flat. And the horse is like, hey, let's do something. Well, it's probably not the right day to work on the intricacies of a lateral bend. Maybe it's the right day to work on something that's a little bit more exciting. And then the third feel was our spiritual feel. So how we're relating to the horse and understanding that we're trying to blend two beings together. We're trying to, relate to the horse in a way that we would like to be related to ourselves. And then in regards to timing, we had several different things that we spoke about in timing. So when the appropriate time is to release, so knowing what you're after and having clarity in your mind, and that links through to the feel, right? So having that clarity and that confidence is your mental feel. So the timing on that is knowing what you want and therefore knowing when to release, and knowing how to build that release in increments so you're always raising the bar and you're always progressing with the horse. The ask, the timing of the ask. So knowing what, how to set the horse's body up, knowing how to be in time with the feet, so we can apply that cue at the optimum time to get the optimum result, the optimum movement. And then the timing for the horse. When is he ready for us to ask for certain things? And we spoke about my 3 golden rules. So thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Bang on 1 hour tonight. So I'm pretty happy with that. I went a little bit overtime last night. It's fantastic to be back. Please post any comments or questions or anything like that. Feel free to share the replay once it's up or tag any friends in. And also, if you want me to talk about a particular subject on a Monday Night Live, feel free to message that through to me. Do link up with us on social media. We are always putting information out there. Every Monday I send out a newsletter, which today's will actually go out tomorrow because of the public holiday today. But Mondays we do Monday Night Live. That's what I'm doing here. Wednesdays we send out a newsletter directly to your inbox. If you would like to receive that, send me your email address via private message. Fridays is YouTube channel, so we upload a new training video to our YouTube channel every Friday, and I of course share my thoughts from my walk, and my articles go in magazines and all that kind of stuff. So lots and lots of information out there for you guys, but I'm always happy to take questions. And hey Bindi, yes, you will see me on the weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. You're welcome, Debbie. Thanks, Beth. Thank you all so much for joining, and I will see you all around either online or in person on the weekend at the Gold Coast. We do have a couple, I think we've got one. I've had a couple of messages today, so I think I've got 1 or 2 rider spots at the course this weekend, which is on the Gold Coast, or it's at the northern end of the Gold Coast. It's at Jimboomba there, and I've also got some fence sitting spots there available, and you can always link up with us to find out as we add new dates to the calendar. So thank you all. Have a great night. Happy Easter.